Apple founder Steve Jobs quickly became a household name, of course, but few know of the other trailblazers behind the company. Tony FADELL co-created the iPhone as well as the iPod alongside the famous designer Johnny Ive, and he's now mentoring the next generation of startups that are changing the world. His new book, Build, is an advice encyclopedia from his personal experience navigating initial failures to monumental success. He joined Walter Isaacson to talk about his journey and the future of tech.
Thank you, Christian, and Tony FADELL. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Walter. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you, Christian, for having me.
You wrote a wonderful book called Build that's just out, and it's about how to be a great entrepreneur, startup artist. I knew you back when you did the iPod and then the iPhone. You led the team at Apple that made those. Tell me what lessons you learned from that entrepreneurs should know.
Well, Build was really a book all about mentorship. It was written to help people, whether they're in their career building something or in their building themselves or building a team, building a product. And so these are lessons learned from across my my experiences. But the biggest thing I learned at Apple was from Steve was how to tell a story and generate a customer experience from the very moment someone heard about a product and figure out how to get people to hear about the product, all the way through not just buying the product or using it, but also what happens for customer support, all these kinds of things. How do you tell a real story about the product as well as bring that story to life through every single customer touch point that a user has or even before they purchase the product? So that was a big thing that Steve brought to Apple and was such a master at.
One of the things we do is we learn from things that don't work, that were mistakes. Mm-hmm. In some ways, you learned from your General Magic experience. Explain what General Magic was and why it didn't really work.
Okay, so General Magic, there's a whole movie about it. People should check it out because it's a spectacular failure people can learn from it. But General Magic was the Mac team, minus Steve, creating the iPhone 15 years too soon. It was a product that was born out of the future, okay? And it was a bunch of incredibly smart people, my heroes, creating something that the world didn't need yet. They were creating for each other. They saw where technology was headed, so they were creating for each other. But people in that day, and this was in early 90s, they were creating that iPhone. Back in the 90s, there was no internet. We had no internet. So we had no mobile data services or mobile communication. Most people didn't even have email, right? We had downloadable e-shopping, travel, games, apps, all of these things that today we know are problem solvers, painkillers. Back then, no one even knew they had the pain. They didn't even know it could exist. It was basically magic, but no one had to buy it. They never had a need to buy it. Except a few geeks, about 3,000 people bought it. And it was, at the time, $500 million, $750 million investment. And obviously it turned to zero. So, it's not just about having the right team. It's also having the right timing when society understands the problems you're trying to solve, as well as having the technology to solve it in the right way. So you take all of those things to come together to make a new product. And that ultimately ended up what became the iPhone, right? And many of the different people at General Magic, Android was born out of General Magic, eBay was born out of General Magic. So many things came out of there, and it was a seminal time for many people. And I would never trade that disaster because we really learned from that failure in a big way.
One of the things about Build, the book, is that it's sort of mentorship in a box, you call it. Tell me why mentorship is so important, and who was the most important mentor in your life?
My most important one? My grandfather. Because if he didn't start me on the path, I would have never gotten through all the things I did. He was an educator. He was the superintendent of the Hamtramck school system in right outside Detroit or inside Detroit, Michigan. And he taught me how to use tools. He taught me that everything in this world that has been built by humans, and don't be afraid of it. You can create with just like they did, or you can modify, you can repair. And so I was using tools with my brother, hand tools at 3 years old, and saws, and my mom and grandmother were like shrieking, like, "Oh my God, they're gonna, hurt themselves." But he put us in harm's way for a reason, to teach us. And teach us that we can create, we can be creative, and that was at the age of 3, 4, and he continued and helped me buy my very first computer. So I think he was a clear person who could educate and get me set on the right trajectory, and I couldn't thank him more, and dedicate the book to him.
When you helped create the iPhone and then the iPod and then the iPhone, it really kicked Apple up a huge notch into being a platform in which other people could build, and it made Apple very much a concentration of power. Now we have 4 or 5 companies like Google, like Apple, like Facebook that truly concentrate power. What do you do to try to stop this market concentration that might hurt competition?
What I've always said, and I do believe with great power comes great responsibility. And you cannot extract every penny from everyone and you can't, and this is the problem I saw, with other companies in the 90s and 2000s, where they would crush the suppliers in Asia and get all the money out, and they would just have them, quarter to quarter. They were all paupers, even they were doing incredible work for these businesses. You have to understand, when you are in that seat, you have to be benevolent, and you have to make sure everybody is winning here. If somebody's losing, they're going to come against you at some point.
Wait, do you think some of these big tech companies are following the rule of benevolence when it comes to competition?
No, I don't. Unfortunately, I don't. And I think they need to be careful, because it will be a strong backlash. Just like any revolution of a government where the inequity becomes so wide, there's a revolution. There will be a reckoning at some point, and everyone has to understand we have to all work and get along. It doesn't mean we're all equal, but it does mean we have to be closer and reduce the inequality and make sure that it is accessible to people and open, because otherwise you will get an uprising. And we're starting to see that in governments around the world, because they've said enough is enough, and you can't just extract without giving back.
And there's a big pushback against big technology in American politics today as well. What should the technology companies be worried about, and is it a valid worry?
Well, I think that not just tech companies, but most companies in general, they have become governments in their own right in some ways. The CEOs, and I wish them well, but a lot of them are politicians now. They have to worry about the governments and multiple governments, and should we be selling in China or not? If we are selling in China, we're not doing the right thing for human rights. These kinds of things. So these big businesses have turned into governments in a way, and these CEOs have turned into certain government officials, and with their own biases, or people claim that they have biases. It's really hard now. I don't have any real
Today's
advice.
date,
We have to watch
May
out for
14th,
politicizing companies,
2022.
because and media has always kind of been that way, but we can't let that get into tech and everywhere else, because if we do, we're never going to solve this climate crisis. We're never going to solve our social media crises that we have. We have to find some more common ground and bring more togetherness and be around a mission, and not am I left, am I right, and being attacked from all sides.
You talked about the crisis in social media just now. What is the crisis in social media?
Anyone with any voice says, I have an equal right to use this amplification tool to influence people.